Good morning. Is it Tuesday? Well,
It is.
if it's Tuesday morning, it is time for the Kitchings Table. Good morning. I'm your host, W. Earl Kitchings. Joining me as usual on Tuesday mornings here at 10 o'clock is my co-host, Ronleen Kennedy. Ronleen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Earl. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. And I'm just happy that I'm able to bring today's show topic to our audience because it is a topic that is of grave importance.
It is.
Grave importance. And if if the people who have power, who have monetary power, political power, any other kind of clout, if there is not a change sometime soon, things will no longer exist as we know them today. And with everything that Mother Nature has to give up, so does man. And when it becomes unsustainable any longer, man will not be able to bear the brunt of what's happening. So I thought my title for today's show was pretty, not really unique, but I'm going to just put it out there for you and you tell me what TV show used to have something similar to this title. Our show title today is Earth, the Last Frontier.
Star Trek.
Okay, there you go. Star Trek always based its opening by saying space, the
Mm-hmm.
last frontier. Well, Star Trek was hundreds of years from now, based on the TV show. And I guess at some point in time, humans on the earth came to some decision that either we're going to live together and get along or we're going to perish. Right now, this is where we are in 2023. We are at critical stages of perishing if we are not careful. So, Earth, the last frontier. And I brought that out because the amount of money that's being invested in our space program, comparatively speaking, that is as we said, or your parents might have said to you, that's a wish list. That's a wish list. Okay, so we've gone out in space. We've gone to the moon and back. We've been out in space. We've got uh, all this technical equipment and hardware floating around in our atmosphere just above the Earth. Billions of dollars spent for that. But when we talk about wanting to go to Mars, since that is the next targeted planet, a planet that has nothing on it, it can't really do anything for the survival of people on this planet, but yet you want to go on a Mars mission that will cost almost $3 billion. You've already spent hundreds of millions, uh, almost $1.1 billion, and since the inception of the space program, the United States has spent $650 billion to now position us for talking about wanting to go to a planet that's 7 months away in travel time, that you got to take everything you're going to need there in order to survive, that you can't grow anything on the planet. There's, you know, just the whole thing. So when we talk about when we talk about the annual budget for NASA is 22.6 billion. The NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they need a budget of 6.8 billion in order to sustain and keep what they're trying to do going forward. Everything is relative because you're spending money. So seven billion compared to almost 23 billion. That's about 3 times as much spent annually. And the reason why I bring this out is because of this. For those people who are in denial that global warming is happening, if this summer, if all the forest fires that have happened over the country, if the fact that the ocean temperatures are warming up, if you don't believe this planet is warming up, when you see icebergs that have been around for millions of years starting to melt, because those icebergs at the Arctic and Antarctic or Antarctica, they didn't just happen because you put them in the freezer and they became ice formations. It took a long time for them to be that deep in the ocean, that wide, and that high above the surface. So when we talk about the planet warming up, and when we talk about coastlines, and I think New York and New Jersey found this out when they got tremendous weather a few years back, and the ocean rolled into the cities of New York City. That lets you know just what level you are at New York. You're almost at sea level, and sea level means the land is at the same height as the ocean. When water from the ocean rolls into the metropolitan city of New York, and there's nothing to hold it back, and there won't be anything to hold it back when the water rises. You need to understand where we are. So we need to turn our attention on the true last frontier, which is not 7 months in outer space, but 7 days a week right here on the planet Earth. Because if the temperature of this planet continues to rise, if the ocean temperature of this planet continues to rise, plants and animals are going to suffer, and irreparable harm will be done. And for those of you who don't understand what irreparable harm is, you can never change it back. It's gone forever. So let me just give you some facts about what we're talking about here when we talk about the last frontier, which right now happens to be dealing with the oceans, because the oceans constitute 70% of the Earth's surface. 70% of the Earth's surface is the ocean. 361 million square kilometers. That's how much water there is. 1.34 million cubic kilometers, and the average depth is 3,700 plus meters. The ocean is vast. They still don't know everything they need to know about the ocean. And we have 5 oceans on the planet: the Arctic, Atlantic, Indian, Pacific, and Antarctica, or the Southern Ocean. But here's the thing, Ronleen: 70% of the Earth's surface is water, but that's salt water. 2% of the Earth's surface is fresh water. So that's 70%. Unless you change it into fresh, you can't drink it. You can't water your plants. You can't water your animals. You can't do anything with it but let the animals in the sea exist. So when that 2% gets down to 1.5%, and some you might think, well, a half a percent is not a lot. Well, tell you what, I want to give you $1 billion, and I want you to take a half of 1% of that billion and tell me what you got. And tell me, if you lost that much money in your bank account tomorrow, would it affect what you're doing today?
And
So,
definitely global scale, it does.
absolutely. And we don't think about it because one sounds so much smaller than 100.
Hmm.
One sounds smaller than 10. Well, 1% of a billion
Mhm.
1% of 1 billion. Hmm. That's a lot of millions.
Yes, and so let's really bring it home. If that 1% was lost, that means 1% of the population won't be fed based on what you're talking about today.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Right. And so that means if it's not fed, death is imminent.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's per day. you
Per
know,
day.
and those numbers can be massive very quickly.
Well, I think when COVID hit and you were losing hundreds to thousands of people per day, if you were losing 1,000 people per day around the world, in a year's time, that is 365,000 people.
Mhm.
In 3 years, that's a million people, but it was going faster than that.
Yes.
It was going faster than that. So it's not until the numbers jump that you pay attention to what the numbers are doing. So 1% of the 2% of fresh water on this planet, if it leaves us, that means, like you said, well, 1% of total population is going to be affected. Well, probably more than that because there are places where there's hardly any water now.
Mhm.
And my thing is, rather than spend all this money on destruction, why can't it be more time spent on building things for the sake of keeping humanity at a comfortable level on a planet that you only got one of these? Science has not discovered another planet in our universe that is equal to Earth. There is not another blue marble in our solar system. So we know the planets, and none of them can sustain human life except Earth without some type of mechanical help. And you got to build it and transport it to wherever you're trying to take it in order to use it. So, with all this destruction, and I was looking at something on the internet recently, and they said, do you know who's the most dangerous animal on the planet? And they started showing all these real scary animals. I mean, animals that will eat you, that will poison you, and all these things and animals that could cause you irreparable harm or death. And you know what they said, Ronleen?
Yes, it's the human beings.
They said, look in the mirror.
Yes.
This most dangerous planet animal on the planet,
Hmm.
but it can also be the most saving animal on the planet if you directed your energies to preservation. But I know I sound like a novice, and I'm being very short-minded and thinking like that. And of course, we don't start really wanting to save things until it becomes critical. And the first name we call out is that three-letter word when we get in trouble. You know, but He gave man the power,
Yes, it is.
and some men choose to use power for greed, self-exploitation, to get more than what they need and forget about others. So anyway, as we deal with this last frontier, let me just give you this fact about why I'm speaking about the ocean. Because the average temperature of the entire ocean has a range of 59 to 62 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what it should be at on an average all the time. Almost 63 degrees. Anything beyond 63 degrees, and you start, like if you had a needle, it starts going toward in your car with your temperature gauge where it says cool and hot. When that
Mhm.
thing start moving toward that H, that's saying your engine is getting hot. And all of a sudden, when you see that steam coming from out of your hood, you know that engine is like it's gotten so hot that it's like we can't hold it anymore. So if the average temperature has to be sustained at about no more than 63 degrees in order for it to be comfortable for everything living in it, because once it goes higher than that, it gets to be a problem. And when I say higher than that, I'm gonna just take it to a minimal level, Ron Lee. If the ocean temperature went up 5 degrees, 5 degrees, think about today's temperature right now. If you're living in a place and it says 80 degrees and it goes up 5 degrees, you may be able to tell a difference. If it goes up 10 degrees, you'll definitely be able to tell a difference. If it goes from 80 to 95, oh, you'll be able to tell a difference. And if it's at 80 and it goes to 60, you'll be able to tell a difference. So in the ocean, it's a little bit more critical than that. So when the temperature of the oceans increase, here are a few things that happen immediately. Sea level rise, coral bleaching, and that's what we're going to talk about today is coral bleaching and its effects. But accelerated melting of Earth's major ice sheets, which is at the North and South poles, intensified hurricanes, changes in ocean health and biochemistry, ice melting, marine heat waves, ocean acidification. That means the ocean becomes more acidic, which affects the marine life and the ecosystems. So now, when we talk about coral reefs are very important to the ecosystem of this planet because they have collections of different species of uh, ocean animals that interact with each other and the physical environment. And a coral is a class of colonial animal. Check this out now. Is a class of colonial animal, which means it is a living thing related to hydroids, jellyfish, and sea anemones. Those three animals. They put coral under that. And the purpose of these corals is to have ways for animals to eat microscopic plants such as algae. It provides what we call polyps, where animals can go and feed off these reefs. Uh, Photosynthesis, which requires sunlight for these reefs to, live. And they live in shallow waters so that the sunlight can interact. Excuse me. And the colors of the reefs can vary. And also within this marine life around coral reefs, you'll find sponges. I know we don't think about a sponge being an animal, a living organism. Oysters, clams, crabs, sea stars, sea urchins, many species of fish, seagrass, mangrove, mudflat. All these have a reason for coral reefs to exist because of the life that comes from them. And without these coral reefs in these areas that are close to land shores and islands, then the sea life around there basically dies. So the small animal, in order for a big fish to survive, it must eat a smaller fish. And a smaller fish must eat something smaller until you get all the way down to um, algae and things of that nature. So every living thing in the ocean lives off of something else in order for it to sustain itself. So the smallest is eaten by the largest, which is eaten by the larger, which is eaten by the larger, and so on and so forth. Coral reefs provide 25% of the habitation for the planet's marine species. That's one fourth of the habitat on this earth live in coral reefs. 4,000 species, not 4,000 fish, 4,000 species depend on coral reefs for their life cycle. An estimated 1 billion people around the world depend on the marine ecosystems that come from coral reefs for food, protection, income, tourism, fisheries, all these things are a product of marine life that is associated with coral reefs. So I'm going to stop right there and kind of let that settle in and see if there are any thoughts that you may have as it relates to what a coral reef actually means to our existence on this planet.
Hmm. So thank you so much for that. And the shows that I think about that was sponsored by Mutual of Omaha. Remember those back in the day?
Wild Kingdom.
The Wild Kingdom. And when I think about the shows that I've been watching recently, thank God for streaming now, right? Uh, I've been paying attention to, like you said, the ice sheets that are disappearing.
Mm,
And I was wondering, like, why was that important? I thank God for all the trips that we had to Marine Land
mm-hmm.
here in Florida, uh, to be able to learn about those things and try to get some interest in children early to become marine biologists so that they can be the studier of the ocean and how it is important to us. And like you said, if we keep allowing global warming to happen, if we don't take our part, if we don't stop doing this pollution that we're doing with pesticides, herbicides, and all the other things that has been polluting and damaging our Earth's atmosphere and our ecosystem, those whatever damage we're doing it won't be reversible. So when you think about, we all depend on fresh water,
Mm-hmm.
and 70% of salt water that's sustaining the life that's in those oceans. But we can't benefit from the salt water, as in what's keeping us sustained as human beings, as our livestock, as everything that we depend on. And man has not figured out how to make water as of yet. They haven't found the secret. And to make the water fresh, to turn salt water to fresh water, they haven't found the secret. So, with that said, we have to be good stewards over our planet Earth. And as you said, all of this money that's being spent for outside of the Earth and not here where it is really needed, perfect one thing first before you go stretching out somewhere else that's not going to sustain you at all. So, what I'm trying to say here, being good stewards over your money is the same as being a good steward over your earth. Because as you pointed out, we depend on the seafood that comes from that so we can have a variety of food. We need the nutrients that comes from these foods. We need the minerals that come out of the ocean. So if all of that is polluted and contaminated, where would our life be? And the rare minerals that our bodies need to sustain our life is just as important as that fresh water that we depend on.
Well, your points are very valid. And again, you and I may be naive as it relates to what happens with the. I have to excuse me for the noise in the background. Of course, today is a yard day, so there's nothing I can do about that. But the fact that we have to deal with the aspects of life as we know it, depending on Mother Earth. And when Mother Earth is sick, we're all going to be sick. So when her ocean and her ocean animals are being deprived, the rest of the world is going to be deprived too.
Yes. And so let me just talk about what you're talking about dealing with depriving. So the show that I watched was dealing with the earth sheets in Antarctica was going away. There isn't enough ice there. So I saw where the polar bear was trying to chase its food out of the water, okay, and the seals didn't have enough ice to lay on, to stay out of the water, to breed their young, um, and feed their young. The polar bears and all of the other animals look for them to be on that ice so they can capture them and eat them, right? So everything is being malnourished. Okay. Everything is being depleted. So, and then we talked about extinction. I've been hearing extinction ever since I was a child, and all of the protections that goes into place. I remember one man that was one of my mentors, he was talking about the sea turtles have more rights than what humans do. And so I understand that now, dealing with the ecosystem and how it is intricate to us. So we depend on wildlife, we depend on the organisms to do what needs to be done. I just watched a show recently about a butterfly. And what butterflies mean to me. So, with that being said, this one particular butterfly has to be carried down into the ant's nest. They treat the butterfly, treat the caterpillar, let's get it right. They treat the caterpillar like it's food or what have you, but the caterpillar goes into its little cocoon. And once the caterpillar does what needs to be done for maturation and then comes out of that cocoon, now that butterfly gets to fly away. And they said the reason why it needed to come from is when the butterfly when a caterpillar streamed down from this little silk web down to the ground to be carried away from by the ants. They were saying it was very necessary. So there's an order that is set up by God. Okay, there's an order there that's set up in order to get the kind of species that we're able to get. So when those things are tampered with, when those things are discarded, then it trickles right on down what they call the food chain. And humans, we depend on the things to happen the way that they should have been happening, the order of things. So I'm going to let that rest right there. Take it over.
Well, there's an order, and we seem to forget about the order of things because the one order that man values more so than anything is called the MONEY order. And that order takes priority over everything else. So the economic value of the coral reefs, as I stated, how much the plant and animal life in the ocean value these reefs. And oh, by the way, Ronline, the largest coral reef in the world is the Great Barrier Reef over on the east coast of Australia, and it spans 1,600 miles.
Wow.
It's so large you can see it from space.
Hmm.
So think about 1,600 miles of a reef, just a reef, and how many animals and plants must survive and live off of that particular reef. But annually, uh, the net benefit from coral reefs is about almost $30 billion annually. Tourism, recreation, coastal protection, biodiversity, reef structure, marine species, all these things are tied into it. Commercial value, fisheries, they're in the hundreds of millions. So everything, like you said, has an order. And as that order is done on a regular basis, we must keep in mind that the coral reef is so important to sustaining life in the ocean on this planet yesterday, today, and prayerfully tomorrow, because without this, the decimation of a lot of animals and plant life goes away. You're tuned into the Kitchings Table, can be seen and heard every Tuesday morning here at 10 a.m. We invite you to join us so that you can hear something of importance, of newsworthiness, and anything that is of value that we feel we need to share with you. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's very lighthearted, and sometimes it's just in between. But whatever it is, we feel it's of value to you. And maybe it's something you can pass along, or it will make you do the I didn't know that and make you think about it. Our topic today is Earth, the last frontier. We're talking about the fact that global warming is starting to heat up the ocean. And as the ocean heats up, plant and animal life is affected. Ronline, I don't know if you saw this on the news the other day, but uh, and I'm not sure if it was at a beach here in Jacksonville or not. It looked like it was, but a killer whale now, not a sperm whale or something like that, or pilot whales that we've seen in the past. I'm talking about a killer whale was found beached on a beach here in Florida. And when you look at an animal of that magnitude and that size, who is basically out of its element, who cannot swim away, who cannot get into enough water deep enough in order to swim away, it is stressing out. It is stressing out. People came to that animal's rescue. Mammals came to this large mammal's rescue. Let me put it in scientific terms. Mammals who walk on two legs came to the aid of this mammal who lives in the ocean, one of the most predatory animals in the ocean, the killer whale, the orca. And it looked like it was about 40 people working to get this animal back into the ocean. They finally got some straps around it. They found a pontoon boat to help pull it back. They got it back out in the ocean and it survived. But just think about that animal stressing in the heat, out of the water, and unable to have the freedom to move around in its natural elements. That's what kinds of things are going on as the water temperatures causes problems for animals. As I mentioned earlier, I touched on the term coral bleaching. Coral bleaching, and it is just what it sounds like. The whitening of coral that happens when the algae in those living organisms are taken away. They lose their color, they lose their ability to do what they need to do. So if you've ever gone to a store and you've seen like coral pieces on the shelves that you can buy, and they're so pure and white, that's what coral bleaching looks like in real terms. When that coral goes from a color to pure white, it has been bleached. It has been devastated. It has been decimated. It has been basically killed. And when that happens, that means the water temperature is heating up. And that's why we're talking about now the need to understand that global warming is not some pie in the sky thought that, oh, it's temporary and it's not going to be around for a while. If, as you mentioned, we don't start to do a better job of taking care of the ocean, producing what it needs, helping it so it can help us sustain life, then life as we know it is going to not exist. Again, only 2% of the water surface on this planet is fresh water. 2%. 70% of the earth is covered by water, which means most of that water is salt water. Good for the animals, the fish, and all the plants in the ocean. Not good for man. Not good for the animals who walk on earth. Not good. So if man does not do a better job of caring enough about himself to take care of the ocean, anytime there's a oil spill or something like that that happens on the ocean, many animals suffer and die. Uh, Plant life for animals suffers and dies. And if the animals have nothing to eat, then man has nothing to eat. And as I thought about that killer whale being beached on the beach the other day, I just thought about the fact that if they didn't save it, and there's this carcass of this major animal sitting on the beach, it decays, it provides bacteria, and all kinds of health issues become a problem. Thank God that those people got it back out in the ocean so it can see another day. But this is where we are in this time. And let me just read you something real quick. Because coral colonies serve as foundations of coral reef ecosystems, when they translate into a loss of habitat for numerous plants and animals, they become a situation that precipitously causes harm. Precipitously. I had to go look that up. Precipitously. And what that means is suddenly and dramatically. Precipitously. So when the coral reefs are precipitously in danger, they're suddenly and dramatically in a situation of dying. CNN reported, go
Those,
ahead.
and as you said, those um, effects can become irreversible.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Man cannot reverse it. See, with all these ice sheets, icebergs melting, like I said, you can't just go pull out some icebergs out the freeze and put them back in the ocean and make it come back to life. No. When they're gone, they're GONE, gone. Man cannot see, they weren't made by man, so man can't replicate them. When the animals who depend on those parts of the world no longer can survive, it's going to be a very sad day. Just last week, CNN reported that urgent rescue operations are taking place here in the state of Florida to save the coral reefs from the unprecedented water temperatures that are spreading across the Florida Keys. And as these keys and the reefs in the Keys are decimated with these water temperatures, I mean, they talked about the fact that in the Florida Bay, temperature hit 101 degrees. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to take a bath in 101-degree bathtub water.
No.
I don't know about you. Some people like it hot. I don't want it that hot. That's uncomfortable. So if that's uncomfortable for humans, imagine what it's like for the animals who live in the water every day, who expect for the waters to be in the 60s. But because the water temperatures, the planet is heating up, it's causing problems. And this is what we're saying, that this is not something that has just come to the attention of scientists and man. This has been something that has been going on for quite a while. In 2018, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a dire warning about the future of the world's reefs, forecasting that 1.5 degrees Celsius was not going to be a good thing, saying that by 2027, between 70 and 90% of all reefs on the planet could perish.
Mm.
70 to 90%. That's where we're heading. So again, which is more important? Which is the frontier man, or at least man in the United States, should be focused on? Getting to Mars or keeping the oceans on the planet, the only planet that he can live on without mechanical help, in good health, and with some longevity. Many humans will not be going on missions to Mars. They won't be able to afford it. But that won't matter if we don't take care of the earth and Mother Earth that we live in and live on. And at times, you just have to wonder, does man really care? And of course, you have that percentage that cares and that percentage that shrugs their shoulders and be like, it'll be all right. It kind of disturbs me at times when people make comments like, well, we'll be all right. God will take care of it. Have you ever looked at God's agenda to see how much you got to take care of every day? I mean, just think about it. Have you ever looked at His agenda?
And
And
then
who's
that, uh, like you said, he's given us the ability to study,
right?
to study the things that are, our environment, to be able to improve on them. But instead, as you said, greed takes place. All kind of things are taking place and all kind of destruction as well.
You spend $650 billion on a space program, but you won't spend 10% of that on a program to save Mother Earth, to save the oceans, to save the earth, for recycling, for eliminating industrial waste. You want to create more garbage. You want to send more garbage out into outer space. You want to continue to weaken the upper atmosphere. And again, man is just so caught up on greed and money. But you have to understand that every time you send a rocket into outer space, it weakens our atmosphere.
And let's talk about that for a minute because one of the things in my research was about pollution. So, with the gases that are going to and from to get you to transport you out and to transport you back in to Earth's atmosphere, it is being destroyed by gases. The gases that it takes in order for to move that rocket, to move that vessel in and out. So just bring that home for a moment there.
Well, the fuel that's needed to propel these vehicles into outer space, that fuel has to be developed from fossil fuels. And fossil fuels can only be effective as a propellant when they are ignited by a flame, which causes them to burn. And no matter whether it's a match or it's a car engine or a space engine on a rocket, the fumes, the sulfur, all of that comes off of that causes there to be smoke and it goes into the atmosphere. So imagine the atmosphere being a balloon around the earth. And every time you pop a hole in that balloon, although it's going to close back up, you're letting something out, but you're also letting something in. And you were weakening the vitality and the strength of your atmosphere. And internally, as you send up more gases that rise up into that upper atmosphere, the chemicals eat away at the atmosphere. You may not see it now, but over time, it continues to eat at it. It's uh, like an algae, like an amoeba. It just continually eats at it. So it could have been a mile in thickness uh, 500 years ago. Now, over time, it's down to three quarters of a mile thick. And as you continue to progress, and the more you utilize these chemicals or whatever to destroy the atmosphere, it shrinks till it gets to a point where, like they talk about ultraviolet light, ultraviolet rays. Um, Ultraviolet waves from the sun are no joke,
No.
and the sun is not going anywhere.
Hmm.
It has not gotten weaker over time. It has not gotten cooler over time. It's not moved further away over time. It's not going anywhere. It's still beating down on this planet. Thank goodness we have that source of energy. But man, again, in his wisdom to improve life, it seems that you must destroy some life in order to improve some life. So again, I talk about the fact that the need to invest more in salvation as opposed to exploration.
Hmm.
Okay, we keep wanting to explore beyond our means, but sending a rocket or a spacecraft to Mars, which takes 7 months, for what? For what? Because if there's no Earth here when when it's time to come back, what good did it do you? You oh well, man, we can't get back into the Earth's atmosphere because something has happened. Oh well. So I don't know if the next generations are going to do anything different to make things happen. I know we have a lot of talented young people, a lot of smart young people coming on the scene. This need to have more and more money. Uh, I get the need for that. You know, it takes money to make money. You know, it's a reciprocation of, one needs the other. But let's spend a little bit more time on doing the things that will take care of the planet as opposed to destroying the planet by looking for some other way to survive or to live. So, with the ocean warming up, and when the ocean warms up, and starts to boil, things can't survive. And that's what we're facing. The fact that man and the planet and the animals on land and the plants and the animals, they're not going to be able to survive when the water is so warm that it rushes to our shores and covers up portions of land. And it's like, there's nothing you can do. An island gets covered in water. There's nothing you can do about it until the water recedes, and who knows how long that might take. So we're not caring enough to save the planet. Well, what happens if the planet just folds its cards and says, I've had enough, I'm done? Then what happens?
Mm, mm, mm,
So I wanted to bring this to our audience today for a couple of reasons. Number one, for awareness. Number two, to help people become proactive in their thinking and their actions for doing whatever they can to help save the planet from destruction by man's hands, pollution, waste, items that can't be recycled, uh, water that can't be replenished because it's been destroyed. All these things are real, and the planet warming up is real. And if human existence is not critical, then I don't know what is.
You're right. And Earl, let's talk about the Coral Restoration Foundation before we close.
Go ahead.
All right. It says a floral based reef restoration is a not for profit organization, and they are setting up a coral bus. That means that it's a place where the coral reefs can thrive. They're feeding those reefs what it needs in order to be able to help sustain life. So reach out to those foundations. If you want to find a place to give, give to those foundations because we just explained to you how critical this is. And for those people, I think the earth science, we only had that for like 9 weeks in school, Earl. I think that needs to be a year taught subject. I don't know what you're thinking, but that's what I'm thinking. So we're 15 minutes from 15 seconds from the close.
I think what needs to happen is, uh, from an educational standpoint, we're going to have more specialized schools for specific uh, topics and specific things. So as that industry changes, hopefully it will change to address what the needs of the world are. So with that, we have come to the end of our time here on the Kitchings Table. We are just so happy that you joined us today. Again, join us every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on whatever platform you find us on. Here for the Kitchings Table, I'm Earl Kitchings, the host. As always, joining me is my co-host, Ronleen Kennedy. Until next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., we say do something good, not only for you, but for the planet. Until then, take care.